The galaxy had always believed itself to be civilized. There were treaties, alliances, and shining councils that claimed to keep the peace among the stars. For centuries, the alien coalition ruled over hundreds of worlds with calm arrogance, whispering that war was a relic of the past. And then they struck. It began on a quiet blue-green colony world called Eidolon Prime, a human settlement at the edge of coalition space. There were no soldiers there, no defenses, just families, farmers, engineers, and children who looked up at twin moons and dreamed of the stars. When the coalition fleet arrived, the sky turned to fire. They said it was a strategic message, a punishment for humanity's rapid growth, a warning not to expand too far. But to the survivors who watched their cities melt and their loved ones vanish into ash, it was something far simpler. It was murder. Millions died in a single day. Transmission logs captured their last moments, cries for help that never reached Earth. By the time rescue ships arrived, the world was gone, and the rest of the galaxy looked away. The Grand Alien Council offered condolences. The trade guilds spoke of unfortunate misunderstandings. The peacekeepers insisted that humans must accept the consequences of territorial tension. But humanity remembered. The grief became something else, quiet at first like a distant storm, then louder, fiercer. It grew in the hearts of every human across every colony, from the mines of Mars to the orbital stations of Titan. The species, once divided by borders and flags, united under one word: retribution. Factories that once built cargo ships now forged war engines. Shipyards glowed with endless light. The oceans of Earth filled with the reflections of new fleets rising into orbit. Every pilot, every soldier, every engineer swore an oath that echoed through history. No more human graves in alien soil. And from the ashes of Eidolon Prime rose the most powerful fleet humanity had ever built, the Retribution Armada. At its heart was a single ship, the HMS Retribution, a black-hulled dreadnought whose engines burned brighter than a sun. Her captain was a woman named Mira Vance, once a diplomat, now a weapon forged by loss. She had seen Eidolon Prime. She had walked its glassed ruins, the ground still hot beneath her boots. She had buried what was left of her sister beneath the scorched soil. When the High Command asked her to lead the first strike, she accepted without hesitation. Her mission was written in simple words: ensure no one ever hurts humanity again. Now, the galaxy trembled. The alien coalition, proud rulers of 1,000 systems, watched in disbelief as humanity returned to the stars, faster, stronger, and colder than before. The first human assault tore through the Cathari outpost, a military base thought impenetrable. It fell in less than 4 hours. The second, Vial 9, a fortress world with planetary shields, burned for 3 days before silence, and everywhere. A new whisper spread among alien tongues: the humans are coming. They said those words like a curse. They said it to scare children into obedience, to remind soldiers to stay alert. But deep down, even they knew, it wasn't fear of human weapons that chilled them. It was the cold precision, no looting, no laughter, no anger, only quiet determination. They are people who had lost everything, now taking back the stars. On the bridge of the HMS Retribution, Captain Mira Vance stood in silence as another enemy fleet appeared on the holoscreen. Blue symbols marked their positions, scattered and weak. The enemy commander begged for parley. Mira's second-in-command, Sergeant Holt, turned to her. "Orders, ma'am?" Her eyes never left the screen. "No negotiations. Proceed with strike pattern Alpha." The stars outside turned white as human ships accelerated. The battle lasted only minutes. When it was over, fragments of alien ships drifted like dust, glowing faintly in the cold dark. Mira closed her eyes. She could almost hear the voices from Eidolon Prime, the cries, the silence, the wind blowing across ashes. She whispered to no one, "We warned you." The crew said nothing. They knew the war had only begun. Across the galactic networks, panic spread. Coalition leaders tried to downplay the losses, calling the humans reckless primitives. But those who had faced them in battle told a different story. "They fight like ghosts," said one survivor. "No fear, no pity. They don't come to conquer, they come to end." In taverns, on backwater moons, and in the corridors of alien war councils, fear took root. Entire fleets began retreating before human ships even arrived. Whole worlds surrendered before a single shot was fired. But Mira didn't stop. She couldn't. Each victory felt hollow. Each burning planet was another reflection of Eidolon. She had promised herself that no child would suffer again, but every time she looked out into the endless dark, she wondered if vengeance had made her one of the monsters she hunted. Still, her fleet advanced. Still, the whispers followed. In the cold emptiness between stars, the galaxy held its breath. The humans were coming, and this time they would not be stopped. The alien coalition was falling apart faster than anyone believed. Their fleets, once proud and endless, now fled at the mere mention of the human retribution armada. Entire systems were going dark, their governments collapsing under panic and fear. But among the chaos, one alien leader decided to try something different. His name was Admiral Kahlor of the Ratel system, a veteran of 100 battles, a commander who once laughed at the idea of human courage. Now he waited in orbit above his homeworld, his hands trembling as he watched the human fleet drop out of warp. The sky itself seemed to open as hundreds of human warships appeared, silent, black, and cold as the void. No greetings, no warnings. Just the slow hum of weapons charging. Kahlor's voice broke the silence as he sent a desperate transmission across open channels. "This is Admiral Kahlor of the Ratel Defense Force," he said, his throat dry. "We surrender. Please, there has been enough blood. We seek peace." His message echoed across space, bouncing off satellites, translated into human code and carried into the bridge of the HMS Retribution. Inside, Captain Mira Vance stood still, her face hidden behind the faint blue light of the tactical display. Sergeant Holt looked at her. "They're begging to surrender," he said. "First time anyone's had the courage to do that." Mira's eyes were unreadable. "Play it." The message filled the bridge again. Kahlor's trembling plea, his voice shaking as he promised to disarm his fleet, to open his cities, to hand over anything the humans demanded. When it ended, silence filled the air. Holt waited. The crew waited. Even the engines seemed to quiet, as if the ship itself was listening for her answer. Mira finally spoke, her voice calm but heavy. "Do you remember Eidolon Prime, Holt?" He nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "Then you know what mercy got us." She turned away. "Prepare the strike." Holt hesitated. "But they're surrendering." Mira's tone sharpened, cold as steel. "No negotiations. We warned the galaxy." They didn't listen. Outside, the human fleet moved like a storm. Energy beams lanced through the dark, cutting through alien ships before they could even raise shields. Explosions flared across the black sky, silent in the void, beautiful and terrible at once. The Ratel system burned. Kahlor watched in disbelief as his ships vanished one by one, his pleas unanswered. He fell to his knees on the command deck, the light of his own burning world reflecting in his eyes. He whispered, "Why?" "We surrendered." But no voice came back. Minutes later, human landing craft descended through the smoke. The once great cities of Ratel lay in ruins. The surviving aliens were rounded up, not tortured, not harmed, just held in silence under the cold watch of the black suns. When Kahlor was brought before Mira, he tried to stand tall, though his legs trembled. She looked at him expressionless, and for a moment he thought he saw pity, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Do humans know forgiveness?" he asked quietly. Mira's reply was soft, almost a whisper. "We used to." Then she turned away. The prisoners were left alive, but the Ratel fleet was gone, their world crippled, their pride shattered. The human fleet departed soon after, leaving nothing behind but the faint glow of burning cities and the echo of their engines fading into the dark. Across the galaxy, the transmission of Kahlor's surrender and humanity's silence spread like wildfire. To some, it was proof that humans were monsters. To others, it was proof that they were unstoppable. Entire races began to question their loyalty to the coalition. Some started to talk of rebellion, of surrendering early, of begging Earth for terms before their worlds burned too. But humanity didn't speak. They didn't explain. They didn't boast. They simply advanced. On the bridge of the Retribution, Holt finally broke the silence. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "was that justice or revenge?" Mira didn't look at him. Her gaze stayed fixed on the stars ahead. "Does it matter?" she said. Holt wanted to argue, to say that it did, but the words never came. He only nodded and returned to his station. Behind them, the stars stretched endlessly, cold, uncaring, and infinite. The humans pressed onward, leaving behind a galaxy that had finally begun to understand the truth. Mercy had died with Eidolon Prime. The war had changed everything. Humanity's retribution fleet swept through alien space like fire through dry grass, leaving behind only wreckage and silence. In less than a year, entire star systems that once mocked the human species now flew white flags or drifted as ruins. To the rest of the galaxy, the humans were no longer seen as newcomers. They were the storm. But on Earth, inside the towering spires of the United Human Council, there was unrest. The council chamber, a vast circle of light and glass, looked down upon the blue oceans of their homeworld. Dozens of leaders sat around the glowing table, admirals, politicians, scientists, their faces tired, their voices sharp with fear and pride. A hollow screen in the center flickered with images of burning alien cities and surrendered fleets. "We have gone too far," said Councillor Wren, his voice trembling. "Billions are dead. If we continue, the galaxy will never forgive us." Across from him, Admiral Cassin slammed his hand against the table. "Forgive us," he growled. "They slaughtered Eidolon Prime. They left children to burn in glassed streets. You want to stop now? You want to beg for forgiveness from those monsters?" The room erupted in shouting. Some demanded peace. Others demanded complete extermination of the coalition. Words like justice, vengeance, and control echoed off the glass walls. For the first time in human history, the real enemy wasn't out there in the stars. It was within their own council. As the noise grew, a small alert blinked on the central console. A transmission, classified high priority. The room fell silent as the hollow image of Captain Mira Vance appeared above the table. Her expression was calm, but her eyes burned with cold fire. "Council," she said, her voice steady and low, "I bring you the truth you already know. The aliens will never stop fearing us, and we will never forget what they did. But peace built on fear is no peace at all." Rain leaned forward. "Then what are you suggesting, Captain? Endless war?" Mira paused. "No," she said softly. "I'm suggesting we finish it." A heavy silence filled the room. Her meaning was clear. End the coalition. End every fleet, every stronghold, every world that once carried their flag. No treaties. No survivors to rise again. Admiral Cassin nodded slowly, his jaw tight. "She's right," he said. "Only complete victory can guarantee peace." Rain stood, anger flashing in his eyes. "At what cost? We are becoming the very monsters we swore to fight." Mira's gaze shifted toward him through the flickering hollow. "Then perhaps monsters are what the galaxy needs to remember who we are." The transmission ended. The council sat frozen, her words echoing in the silence. Outside, Earth's cities glowed in the darkness of space, unaware of the decision being shaped above them. Finally, the High Chancellor spoke. "We will continue the campaign," she said, her voice low. "But we will monitor Captain Vance closely," no one argued. Everyone knew it was too late. The Black Suns, Mira's unit, had already become more than soldiers. They were symbols, heroes to humans, nightmares to everyone else. And somewhere deep inside, each council member felt the same truth. They had unleashed something they could no longer control. Meanwhile, aboard the HMS Retribution, Mira stood alone in her quarters, staring at the faint image of her sister's locket, the only thing she had taken from the ruins of Eidolon Prime. Her reflection in the glass looked hollow, haunted. She had sent the message to the council knowing what it meant. She had pushed them past the line of hesitation, because hesitation was what got Eidolon burned. The fleet was ready for the next target, waiting for her word. Holt entered quietly. "Orders from the council, Captain?" he asked. Mira turned, her eyes tired but steady. "The same as always," she replied. "We move forward." Holt hesitated. "And if they ever tell us to stop?" Mira gave a faint, bitter smile. "Then they'll have to stop us themselves." Outside, the stars drifted slowly past as the Retribution accelerated toward the next system. Across the galaxy, alien leaders met in panic, whispering of a future where no one would be safe from human retribution. They had tried to crush a small colony to send a message. Now the message was coming back to them, louder and sharper than they could ever imagine. On Earth, the council members watched in silence as another alien world went dark on the display. None spoke. None celebrated. The war had become something else, something no one could define anymore. Justice, revenge, survival. Perhaps all of them, perhaps none. In the end, one truth echoed through every star system, through every shadowed council chamber, and every frightened whisper. Humanity had united, and now nothing in the galaxy could divide them again. The war had stretched across 100 worlds, and still the Black Suns moved forward without pause. They left behind silence where once there had been laughter, ruins where once there had been cities. To the aliens, humanity had become a shadow that devoured light. To humans it was justice, long delayed. Yet aboard the HMS Retribution, even the coldest hearts could feel the weight of what they had done. Captain Mira Vance rarely left the bridge now. Her eyes seemed fixed on some distant memory that no one could see. The crew avoided speaking her name unless they had to. They all felt it, the quiet before something would break. Then one day, during the clearing of an abandoned trade station near the border of Coalition space, they found them. The scanners picked up faint life signs buried deep within the lower decks, weak, cold, barely breathing. When the Marines forced open the sealed doors, the air was thick with dust and silence. And there, huddled in the dark, were the survivors, children, human children, the lost sons and daughters of Eidolon Prime. There were 23 of them. Thin, frightened, their eyes wide with hunger and fear. The Marines froze. Some of them had fought in dozens of battles without hesitation. But now, standing in front of those broken faces, they couldn't move. One of the kids tried to stand, his voice trembling. Are you real?" he asked. Sergeant Holt knelt beside him and took his hand. "Yeah, kid," he said softly. "We're real. You're safe now." But none of them truly felt safe. The station was littered with evidence of what had happened, the remains of alien cages, scraps of uniforms, and old data logs filled with reports of human specimens for study. The aliens hadn't just destroyed Eidolon Prime, they had taken survivors, experimenting on them for years, treating them like animals. Mira arrived soon after, her boots echoing in the dead halls. When she saw the children, she stopped as if struck. Her breath caught in her throat. The youngest, a girl barely 6, looked up at her with eyes too old for her face and whispered, "Did you make them pay?" The words hit Mira harder than any weapon ever could. She crouched down, her voice trembling as she said, "We're still making them pay." The child nodded, silent, and looked away. In that moment, something inside Mira shifted. She had told herself she fought for justice, for peace, for the memory of Eidolon. But now, standing in front of the living proof of alien cruelty, she knew there could be no peace. Only balance. The children were brought aboard the Retribution. The crew gave up their quarters, their meals, their comfort. For the first time in months, laughter returned to the ship's halls. Faint and fragile, but real. The sound haunted Mira. It reminded her of the past, of what humanity had lost. She spent hours walking through the ship's observation deck, staring into the endless dark. Holt joined her one night, standing quietly beside her. "You did good, Captain," he said. "You brought them home." She shook her head. "No, I brought them into a war. Home doesn't exist anymore." Holt didn't answer. He didn't need to. Both of them knew the truth. Home wasn't a place now. It was vengeance. A few days later, one of the older children, a boy named Aaron, asked to speak with Mira. He had been 13 when Eidolon burned. His voice was quiet but steady. "Captain," he said, "they told us stories about you, that you'd come for us. The Thumans never forget." Mira studied him for a moment. "We didn't forget," she said. "And we never will." The boy nodded. "Then don't stop." Those 3 words became the heartbeat of the fleet. Don't stop. They painted it on bulkheads, on armor, on the sides of fighters. It became more than an order, it was a vow. The Black Suns launched their next campaign within days. Alien defenses crumbled before them. Entire fleets surrendered without a shot, terrified by the stories of the humans who burned worlds for their children. Yet even as they triumphed, Mira began to feel a weight growing inside her. Every victory seemed to take something away, a piece of her soul, a piece of what humanity used to be. She watched the children laugh in the mess hall, their faces bright for the first time in years, and wondered what kind of future they were being given. Were they being saved, or were they being taught to hate as deeply as she did? Late one night, Holt found her in her quarters again, staring at the stars. "You can rest, Captain," he said. "They're safe now." Mira didn't turn. "Safe," she repeated. "There's no safe left in this galaxy, Holt, not anymore." Her voice was quiet, but the anger beneath it burned. "Every world we destroy is another reminder. Every alien that kneels proves we were right. And that's what scares me most." Holt didn't know what to say. He left her there, alone with her thoughts and the faint glow of Eidolon's locket still hanging around her neck. Outside, the Retribution moved on. Another star system ahead, another war waiting. The galaxy was changing. Whispers spread through the void faster than light, carried on broken transmissions and frightened rumors. They said humanity had found the lost children of Eidolon Prime. They said the humans had sworn never to stop until every last member of the Coalition paid the price. Fear moved like a virus through alien systems. Worlds that once flew the Coalition flag now tore it down in panic, hoping to avoid the Black Sun's wrath. For the first time in galactic history, the mighty Coalition began to fracture. Some races, too weak to fight and too proud to surrender, turned on each other. Others reached out to humanity, offering their ships, their secrets, their loyalty, anything to survive. Captain Mira Vance read every intercepted message in silence. She saw the desperation in their words, the fear that had replaced arrogance. "Better to stand beside humans than beneath them," one alien governor wrote. Mira knew what that meant. It wasn't respect. It was terror. On the bridge of the HMS Retribution, Sergeant Holt watched her as she stared at the galaxy map, dotted with new alliances and broken empires. "They're turning on each other," he said quietly. "Maybe we don't have to finish this war ourselves." Mira didn't look up. "Fear doesn't end wars, Holt, it just delays the next one." He frowned. "So what's the plan?" "We end the Coalition. Entirely." Her voice was cold, certain, the kind of voice that made even hardened soldiers hesitate. Weeks passed. Reports flooded in from across the stars, alien fleets defecting, rebellions tearing apart Coalition command centers, leaders assassinated by their own people. The great alien empire that once ruled the galaxy had become a carcass devoured by its own fear. Some called it justice, others called it prophecy. But to Mira it was just the natural order. The galaxy had watched Eidolon burn and done nothing. Now it was watching itself burn, and humans were simply holding the torch. During one of the brief pauses between campaigns, Mira was summoned to a secure meeting with Earth's High Command. Her face appeared on the central hollow screen in the council chamber. The human leaders, tired and hollow-eyed, stared back at her. "Captain Vance," the High Chancellor began, "we've received communications from multiple alien factions. They wish to join us, under human leadership. They claim they'll help rebuild what's been destroyed." Mira remained still. "They want protection," she said. "Not peace. Perhaps both," the Chancellor replied. "We could use them to stabilize the sectors." "End the fighting before—" Mira cut her off. "No, not yet." The Council exchanged uneasy glances. "Captain, the galaxy is collapsing. If we don't stop now, there may be nothing left to rule." Mira's voice was quiet but firm. "Then let it collapse. And maybe that's what it deserves." The transmission ended, leaving the Council in stunned silence. They knew what Mira had become, what they had helped create. On the Retribution, the crew prepared for their next operation, the siege of Nitha Prime, the last stronghold of the Coalition. But before they jumped to hyperspace, an unexpected message arrived. It wasn't from an enemy, but from an ally, the Zern, one of the smaller races that had joined humanity out of fear. Their representative appeared on the holo display, his scales dull, his eyes desperate. "Captain Vance," he said, "the rebellion is spreading beyond control. Planets are burning without human fire. Entire species are dying in the chaos. Please call off your fleets. Let there be order again." Mira studied him for a long moment. "You helped them destroy Eidolon," she said. "And you watched." The Zern lowered his head. "Yes, and now we watch our own worlds die. Is that not enough punishment?" Mira's expression didn't change. "No," she said simply, and ended the transmission. Holt stood nearby, his jaw tight. "They're killing each other now, Mira. Maybe we should—" "Should what?" she snapped, turning on him. "Save them? They didn't save us. They didn't even care." "That's not who we're supposed to be," Holt said quietly. Mira's eyes hardened. "It's who we became." She walked past him toward the bridge window, where the stars stretched endlessly before them. "Set course for Nithor Prime," she ordered. The crew obeyed without hesitation. The engines roared to life, and the massive ship surged forward into the dark. As the Retribution disappeared into hyperspace, entire sectors behind them fell into rebellion. The Coalition was gone. The galaxy had become a field of scattered fires, each one feeding the next. And in that fire something new began to grow, a human empire born not from diplomacy or friendship, but from fear and memory. Among the alien survivors, old sayings changed meaning. Where they once said the Coalition protects, they now whispered, the humans watch. And wherever that whisper spread, silence followed. In the great halls of ruined alien capitals, among the smoke and dust, one thought echoed in every mind. The humans had not only avenged Eidolon, they had replaced the gods of the galaxy with themselves. Nethor Prime was the last fortress of the Coalition, the heart of its power and pride. Its cities were carved into the sides of vast crystal mountains, its skies guarded by fleets so large they blotted out the stars. For centuries, Nethor Prime had been untouchable, a symbol of alien supremacy. But that was before humanity. Now as the Black Sun's fleet arrived at the edge of the system, the world that once ruled 1,000 others prepared to face extinction. On the bridge of the HMS Retribution, Captain Mira Vance stood before the glowing hologram of the enemy formation. Tens of thousands of ships surrounded Nethor Prime, a metal storm waiting for war. Sergeant Holt watched the readings flicker on the screen. "We're outnumbered 20-1, he said quietly. "Doesn't matter," Mira replied. "They're outmatched." She turned toward her crew, her eyes cold and steady. "No speeches, no mercy. We end this today." The order spread through the ship like a heartbeat. Alarms sounded. Engines roared. Across the human fleet, soldiers strapped in, their faces calm, their voices silent. They all knew what this moment meant. The galaxy had tried to erase humanity once. Now humanity would erase the galaxy's memory of ever trying. As the fleets closed distance, space itself seemed to hold its breath. Then came the first shot. A single beam of light from the Retribution's main cannon cut through the void, tearing an alien cruiser in half. The battle exploded in an instant, hundreds of ships firing, missiles streaking through the dark, explosions blooming like stars being born and dying all at once. The soundless chaos of war filled the black. Inside the command center of Nethor Prime, High Chancellor Vortak watched the holoscreens in horror. The human ships moved like predators, each strike precise, each kill deliberate. "Impossible," he muttered. "They cannot win this." But deep down he already knew the truth. The humans weren't just fighting to win, they were fighting to end. Hours passed. The alien fleet broke apart piece by piece. Communications collapsed. Panic spread. Entire squadrons fled the battle, only to be hunted down by smaller, faster human ships. By the second day, the skies above Nethor Prime burned red with wreckage. On the third, the Black Suns descended onto the planet itself. Mira Vance led the landing forces personally, her boots touching alien soil that had never known defeat. The city stretched before her, towers shattered, streets filled with smoke and fire. The air was thick with the cries of the fallen. Behind her marched human soldiers in black armor, their steps in perfect unison, their faces hidden behind mirrored visors. They were not an army anymore. They were an execution. As Mira advanced through the capital, she found herself standing before the grand citadel of the High Chancellor. Its golden walls were cracked, its gates torn apart. Inside, Vortak waited on his knees, surrounded by the ashes of his empire. His once proud voice trembled. "Spare us," he said, his hands shaking. "We have learned our lesson. Please, Captain, have mercy." Mira stared at him for a long time. Around her, the sound of burning and distant gunfire filled the silence. "Mercy," she repeated softly, as if tasting the word for the first time in years. "So you ask for mercy?" Vortak nodded desperately. "Yes, please. We will never raise arms against humanity again." Mira looked past him through the broken windows, at the city collapsing under its own weight. She remembered the faces of the children from Eidolon, the screams of her sister, the endless years of war. Then quietly she said, "So did we." Her sidearm rose slowly. A single shot echoed through the ruined hall. The High Chancellor fell without a word. The war was over. Mira stood there, surrounded by silence. Outside, the skies began to clear. The fires faded. The great fortress world of Nethor Prime had fallen. Across the galaxy, The last remnants of the coalition heard the news and surrendered within days. But no celebration came from Earth. There were no parades, no cheers, no victory speeches. Only reports, simple and cold, filed under a single heading: Operation Closure, complete. Back aboard the Retribution, Mira removed her armor for the first time in months. She walked to the observation deck and stared out at the planet below. The world was quiet now. Too quiet. Holt approached her carefully. "It's done," he said. "We've won." Mira didn't answer. Her reflection in the glass looked older, harder, like someone she didn't recognize. "Did we?" she finally whispered. Holt frowned. "What do you mean?" She turned to face him, her eyes distant. "We ended them, Holt. But what happens when there's nothing left to fight?" He had no answer. Neither did she. Outside, the stars shimmered faintly, cold and eternal. The Retribution drifted through the wreckage of a war that had burned half the galaxy, and in that silence, even victory felt like loss. Humanity had claimed its vengeance, but at what cost? The galaxy was silent after Nithor Prime fell. Entire civilizations that once ruled the stars now knelt in the dust. Their ships surrendered, their worlds dark and broken. The coalition was gone, its name erased, its history buried under the ashes of war. But the silence that followed wasn't peace, it was fear. From the frozen moons of the Rim to the molten cores of the inner sectors, everyone whispered the same words: the humans are still coming. Even though the war was over, the Retribution fleets continued to move from system to system, collecting what remained of enemy weapons, dismantling their armies, leaving behind a trail of quiet devastation. No one dared resist, and yet in that silence something began to change. On hundreds of alien worlds, transmissions started appearing. Pleas, cries, confessions. Leaders and civilians alike sent desperate messages to the humans, begging for forgiveness. "Please," one said, "we surrender. We will rebuild in your name. Just let us live." Another wept before the camera, saying, "We have seen enough death. We will worship your mercy if you only stop." Billions of signals flooded human space, a galaxy crying for mercy. On the bridge of the HMS Retribution, the messages echoed through the comms like ghosts. The crew listened in silence, their faces pale. Holt leaned over the console. "They're surrendering everywhere," he said quietly. "Every system. Every world. They're begging for mercy." Mira Vance stood at the viewport, her hands clasped behind her back. "They begged once before," she said. "We didn't listen." Holt hesitated. "Maybe we should now." Mira's voice hardened. "Mercy is what got us Eidolon." She turned away, but the weight in her voice betrayed something else. Doubt. Days passed. The fleet stayed in orbit above the last surviving coalition outpost, a planet stripped of its defenses, its people starving and afraid. From its surface came one final transmission, a choir of alien voices, speaking in broken human language. "We cry for peace," they said. "We cry for life." Holt watched Mira closely. "Captain," he said, they're not soldiers, they're civilians." She didn't answer. Outside, the planet's faint lights flickered in the darkness like dying candles. Something inside her chest twisted painfully, an emotion she hadn't felt in years. She remembered the faces of the Eidolon children, their quiet questions, their fragile laughter aboard the ship. She remembered the smallest one asking, "Did you make them pay?" And now she could almost hear that same voice whispering from the dark, "Haven't they paid enough?" Mira turned away from the window. "End the transmission," she ordered, but her voice was softer this time. "No retaliation. No strike." The crew exchanged uncertain looks. Holt stared at her, searching her face for the meaning behind her words. "Are you sure?" he asked. Mira didn't answer immediately. Finally, she whispered, "Yes, for now." The order spread across the fleet. Engines powered down. Weapons went silent. Across 100 systems, the humans halted. For the first time in years, no ships burned, no worlds fell. The galaxy froze, waiting, afraid to believe it was over. But the crying continued. Some messages were prayers, others curses, some too broken to understand. Holt sat in the comms bay, listening to them in silence. "It's strange," he said to the communication cadet beside him, one of the rescued Eidolon children now grown into a quiet young officer. "When we started this war, I thought hearing them beg would feel like justice." The cadet looked up from her console, her eyes full of something Holt hadn't seen in a long time: sadness. Captain Mira once told me something, she said softly. She said vengeance is a fire that eats what it loves first. Holt said nothing. He looked through the glass window at Mira standing alone on the command deck, her hand resting on the glass, her eyes on the stars. Outside, the alien world below flickered weakly, sending its final signals into the void. One last cry for mercy. Mira closed her eyes. For the first time in a long time, she felt the weight of every decision, every life taken, every city burned. And for the first time she felt fear, not of the enemy but of what humanity had become. She thought of her sister, of Eidolon's ashes, of the children they had saved, and of the monsters they had become in the process. Slowly she whispered to herself, "We used to be better." Holt watched her, realizing what was happening. "She's changing," he thought. Maybe humanity still can. Outside, the stars began to brighten again. The war was ending not with an explosion, but with a whisper, a galaxy crying out to the species that had once known pain better than anyone else. For the first time since the first shot was fired, Captain Mira Vance hesitated, and in that hesitation, the universe itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see whether the humans who had taught everyone to fear them could remember what it meant to forgive.